This after Yerushalmi Eruvin, the article Ozbar edition with the beginning of a new volume, a new parak, Daf Lamed Gimel Aleph, beginning of the fifth parak, which in the Vilna is on Daf Lamed Amud Beis. Halach Aleph. Masnisin. Ketzim Ari Sarim. How do you make the ibor? The Kornei explains. Ma'arbin Mefarish Begar Loshen Isha Ubara. So the language of a pregnant woman. Now the Kaman Hanosen Eir Bibura Shel Ir. Later on we learn the language of you put your Eir in the ibor of the city. Amish Ibur Ir, see the city has a pregnancy. Hashta now explains Ketza Yeshla Ibor. How does the ibor work? Which means an extension to the city. So a Bayis Nichnas, a Bayis Yotze. Nice picture in the Perush Chai. If I can find where I put it here. You have houses going in and out. Oh, you can't see anything in this picture. There you go. House going in and out of the city. Some protruding, some going in, out, in. The Bayis Yotze is obviously one going out, protruding out. The Bayis Nichnas is one protruding inwards. And you have on the extreme left of the picture, you have one going very far out. And you extend the city, protrudes out on that side, all the way out to that line, the dotted line, which starts at that Bayis Yotze, at the extreme edge. Okay, so that's the Bayis Yotze scenario. I'll put it closer. Okay, or you have Pogum Nichnas, Pogum Yotze. Pogum is like you have indentations in the wall. Some go in, some go out. So you go from the most protruding battlement in the wall of the city. Some Gidudios. If they're Gidudios, and that is, according to the Rashi and the Bavli, these are these little ruins which still have walls of 10 Fachim, which are within a certain shear of the city. Goya Sarat Fachim, they still have 10 Fachim high, and they are within, again, a certain distance of the city. As Kornei puts out, within 70 amma and a fraction, 70 amma, so the square root of 5,000, remember that? Also to bridges, or the picture he doesn't picture, he says, look at picture 32. Later we're going to talk about what kind of gesher we're talking about here. The bottom picture is a gesher. Let's see if I'm going to get some focus here. If it gets into focus. There you go. Okay. These gesharim back then had houses. If you've ever seen the old picture of London Bridge, the old London Bridge, and the house is throughout its length. So here's one which has a base dira, but we didn't get up there yet. And the foshes, which are kind of mausoleums. That's this one over here. All of these King Shon and foshes, sheyeshlim base dira, as I mentioned, they have a base dira in them. Motziin esamida connector, you extend the measure opposite that. Muras, and then we make them like a square table. So you gain the corners. So that's like this picture over here at the bottom. Make it so if the corners are rounded off or angled off, you gain the area of the corners, which could be up to 800 amos, or something. It could even be more, I guess, theoretically. Whatever that is, you gain those corners, all the area of the corners, which is outside the city, by squaring off the city at the corners. Okay. So, says the says Gemara, Bayis Nichas Motzina So Keneged Ha'ir. If you have a house which is goes in, we don't go opposite that house which protrudes inwards. We go opposite the entire city, the houses which are flush towards the outside. The B'chaim changed the next word from pogum to bais. It says pogum, it works the same way, but pogum yotzim motzim connected. But you have a pogum which is protruding out Of course, you begin from the outer protrusion, and it's the pictures we saw. You go after the inner, the houses which are protruding inwards are the ones which are flush, or if they protrude outwards, they go after the protrusions outwards. Same thing over here. Okay, Rav Amar Ma'abrin. Rav says Ma'abrin with an aleph. Shmuel Amar Ma'abrin with an ayin. Ma'ad Amar Ma'abrin with an aleph. Musim Sula Aver. We add for the limb. That extension is like a limb. Ma'ad Amar Ma'abrin, who says Ma'abrin with an ayin, which is the way the Korban had it. In the Mishnah, of course, Kisho Bara, like a woman who is pregnant. Tamathim, we learned over there a similar etymological difference of opinion. In Barchan al Ner, you can't make a bracha on a candle, Motzei Shabbos, actually Osul Oro, until you have benefit from its light. So the Rav Amari Osu with an aleph, Shmuel Amari Osu with an ayin. Man Amari Osu, learns that from the Meister Shechem, Shimon Levi, the brothers of Shechem. With this, we will be agreeable with you. We'll have this pact of mutual benefit. To know the proper language to speak to the hearts of those who are exhausted, to know the Dvar Hashem. So la'us is to the proper language at the proper time, and it's here referring to the proper benefit. The proper time having the proper benefit from the candle. La'us, language of ace, like the davar be'ito ma'tov. So this is the right place, the right time, the right hanoah at the right time. Tamatininan, another etymological issue. Lifnei Edain. So for the holidays of the non-Jews. So the Korban Eder puts in the Rav Tani Edain with an aleph before Shmuel Tani Edain with an ayin. Reb Chaim brings that they're actually he brings down a girsa from Brachos that Rav has an ayin and Shmuel has an aleph. Anyway, so whichever way it is, Man Ma'edem with an aleph, Kikrov Yom Edom, the day of their aid, meaning that their downfall is coming. So Rosh Hashanah, so to speak, the holidays of the non-Jews, the pagans, are called the aid, the downfall, the tragedy, and by the way, the Shmuel's close at the bottom has like the Korban Eder. Okay, so Mandamar Eden with an ayin, Veidan Hema. The end of the pasuk is Bayiru Yedu. Their testimony is that they cannot see and they do not know. In other words, so their testimony as the falsehood of the Avodah Zarah. Sheina Sidin, the Vayesh of Dehem, Yom Adin. They will try and they'll come and give testimony as to for their own falseness when the day of judgment comes. Rabbi Yochanan, B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan said, "Mositvi lo Ever." He said that, like Rab said we add before, Le'el, that we add it to a limb. So the Tali Aini Bistakabe. So the Rabbi Yoshua lifted up his eyes and looked at Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Chaim changed the gears here very much, but let's go with this gears. It says here, Amle Lama Tamistakabi. Why are you looking at me that way? Yerushalmi Eruvin brings down the gears on the next line based on a Pitgam, a statement that appears in Ben Sira that the language is supposed to be tzarech loch, tzachak loch. When you need what I'm saying, you smile, you laugh at me, but you smile at me. And lo tzarich lach, they put the words here after tzarich lach, lo tzarich lach. When you don't need what I'm saying, hifli golach. So you look at me in a distracted, in a astonished way. So again, it's like a saying. Tzarech when you need someone, tzarech you look at him in a positive way. Lo tzarech when you don't need someone, hifli golach, you look at him in an astonished way, in a strange way. Fasten on shining of it all kumir abe to low tzarech. The so 13 years. Uh, um, Korban says of it all. Haynichas Rabbi Yochanan ifnei Rabbi Yosha Rabbi Abi Shaloy Tzarech Lishon Menu Dabar. He would go in front of his Rabbi Yosha even though he didn't have to ask him anything. So I'm not sure. Perhaps this is kind of like he felt bad that he had critiqued Rabbi Yosha as Rebbe, and therefore for 13 years he went in all the time, even though he didn't have to ask him, and he didn't need Rabbi Yosha anymore. He outgrew Rabbi Yosha. He was great on his own. Nevertheless, he went in to be machnia himself in front of Rabbi Yosha. And so the Shmuel says, Shem B'Zira, you know what? It's not Rabbi Yochanan didn't gain anything from this. It were not enough that he was Makabel Pnei Rabo, that would suffice. In other words, it was a big mile of him to go in, even though he wasn't actually learning anything, because just to greet his Rebbe, it was something. Anybody who greets the Rebbe as if they're greeting the Shechina. Rabbi Hashem Rabbi Chia Barba says, Ksiv Moshe Kachas Owel. It says Moshe, we're supposed to be on the idea of being Makabel Rabba, it says Moshe would take his Owel outside after the Chet Egel, he would take it outside the camp and plant it. Kama Varachik. How distance was from the camp? It's a meal. It says it was a meal outside the camp, and yet people would come to the tent. For the Hilcham Avakish Moshe in Sivchan, it doesn't say anybody went out to look for Moshe. And the Hilcham Avakish Hashem, anybody went to Avakish Hashem went out to this tent despite its distance from the camp. We can't call Makabel Rabba Kil Makabel Shechina. Anybody who goes to be Makabel Pnei Rabba says Makabel as if they're Makabel Pnei Shechina. So once on the topic again, Makabel Pnei Rabba. Vayom Eliyahu Tishbi said, the rest of the pasuk is Chai Hashem Lokeso Hashem Madati the Farav, by the life of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, so to speak, before whom I stood. Valo Eliyahu Tironi Levim. Eliyahu was a Tiron. In modern Hebrew, Tiron is a buck private, so he's going through boot camp. And the Bnei Moshe goes to that shot, although the Korban goes to the opposite shot, as we shall see. Every time he stood before Achia, the Shiloni was his Rebbe, even though he was just now starting the Nevuah, and he hadn't seen actual Nevuah, so I guess to such a great extent yet. When he stood before Achia Shiloni, Kilu Amal Lifnei Shechina, it's as if he stood before the Shechina. So that's when Moshe says, Klamar. He wasn't cussing the Nevuah till now. We didn't find him saying the Nevuah previously. Why did he say this? Okay, it teaches us that it was as if he was Makabel Pnei Shechina. The Mareches Orach on the bottom says the opposite of the Pnei Moshe. It says Tiron Levim Ba'orach Tiron Shavim Tironi Inyan Sorim. Tironim are high officials. V'Orach Hashalim maybe me safer Arachim Elin Ksaviyat Peirush Tironis who Asher Elav HaMemshala, somebody who has the governance, going to be among the prophets. Something Merucha Netzal Al and he bestowed his spirit on all those who went up in prophecy. So and that along those lines, Korban says, "The Lord of the Tirun Neviim Kadosh Neviim." It was the greatest among Neviim. Sounds like he received the Nevuah standing up. When he was strong and awake, that's not true. Loki he only received the Nevuah when he was in a trance, in a deep sleep. So even though he's the Tirun Neviim, he was always the greatest among the Neviim. Still, only Moshe Rabbeinu received the Nevuah in awake state. Right? This is they only saw it in trance, not in a waking standing state. So rather, it's same thing. It's referring not to his own nevuah, but to rather when he was standing in front of Achia Shiloh. Okay, next says Mara B'Chelba B'Shem Elaine the Beis Shiloh said. The Rebbe said the name of those of the house of Shiloh. It says Elon here. This is like a tree, but the new Shiloh changed it from Elon to Elaine. So he said the name of those of Beis Shiloh. I feel Yom Mevakish Mayim Lefonav. Even if Elio would require, I think it's Elio Mevakish Mayim. Even Elio asked for water, Elisha knows how Yadav. Elisha would pour the water in his hands. Matama, what Pasuk teaches this says, Paul Elisha ben Shaphat, here's Elisha ben Shaphat, Asher lo matoring Ksivkan. Doesn't say he learned Torah from Elio. Asher Yotzak Mayim Elio, he poured the water in Elio's hands, which we take to be a metaphor. But here, the Gemara saying literally, it's saying that it was Talmud, it should be Mahader, should pursue the Shimush of his Rebbe, even to pour waters on his hands. Similarly, Hashem, Lifnei Eli. The Shmuel served the Kosh Baruch Hu in front of Eli. Lola Misharis Eli Lifnei Eli. It was a what do you mean Misharis Lifnei Hashem? It wasn't a Kohen. It was a Levi. He was Misharis Eli. Ela Malamid Shekol Shem Shishas Lifnei Rabo Eli Rabo. Anytime is Misharis in front of Eli's Rebbe. Kilu Shiras Lifnei Shechina. As if it's Misharis the Shechina. Tani Rabbi Shmuel, let the Bais Rabbi Shmuel tell us, "Vayabo Aaron el Chozik Neso Lechol Lechem im Chosei Moshe v'nei Elokim." Aaron came with the elders to eat with Yisro before Kosh Baruch Hu. V'nei Elokim Achlu. That's what they eat in front of Kosh Baruch Hu. What does it mean? They didn't eat in the Mishkan. There was no Mishkan at that time. Ela mikansha makaba b'nei Chavero kil makaba b'nei Shechino. Here it's even doing makaba b'nei Chavero. So presumably the chaver here is Moshe Rabbeinu, who was the chaver of Aaron, but to eat in front of the makabel b'nei chabero to Moshe Rabbeinu, in this case it's makabel b'nei shchina. So as the girsa in Yaakov, shkol makabel b'nei chaverim, and b'nei chaverim would refer obviously to Talmidei Chachamim. So it's referring, I guess, to Moshe and perhaps also Yisro as well, that anybody's eating together with Chaverim, Mekabel Chaverim, is Mekabel Shechin. In fact, in the Mechilta, the Girsa is Pnei Chachamim, so which perhaps is more smoother than Pnei Chaverim. Rabbi Yasser Shem said, Me'echam Abrin. Back to our topic of our sugya. Me'echam Abrin. From where do we extend the protrusion of the city? Keneged Mahashakuf. Opposite the threshold of the city. So the Alpine Abba up to 2,000 amos. In other words, only houses which are found within 2,000 amos of the city extend the city, and not those which are beyond the threshold of the city, beyond those 2,000 amos. The Kormeya says, can't add more to the beyond 2,000 because they're adding more than the entire tchum itself. Rabbi Yossi said to Rabbi Yasser, that might make sense opposite a protrusion. Ava keneged a ear, but opposite the city, afilu kama, even more so. So Reb Chaim has an interpretation of this, and he has a picture of it in his contrast of the pictures. But there's a different picture here in the article, which is not. It's going on Reb Chaim's case, even though it's not Reb Chaim's picture. It's the article's own picture, but it's a bit clearer than Reb Chaim's picture. So we'll use this picture if we can get a focus here. So it's a city which is like a reish. That's the city, and here it's there's the isolated houses which are beyond 2,000 amos, right? But they are part of the structure of the city, so they can extend it beyond 2,000, even there beyond 2,000 amos. So therefore, we can extend here another 500 amos. So you can see they went beyond 2,000, another 500. So you extend it because it's not an isolated house; it's part of the structure of the city. So they can go all the way over out here, and of course, it'll extend also in this direction, since we square off another 500 amos that way. So it's only an isolated house where it can only work within the 2,000 amos. But if it's a whole section, so then go much further out. Okay, there's another shot in the Yerushalmi Kipshuto. This is similar. He says only an isolated house beyond the city that you can't extend if it's beyond 2,000 amos. But if you have an entire neighborhood, um, um, or well, actually, the way he learns it is, well, that's I'm sorry, that's the Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim learns it's a neighborhood, so and that city's like a resh. The way the Yerushalmi Kipshuta learns it is more in line with the simple words here. Lo mistarba el keneged hapogum. It's only if a house is opposite a pogum. So it's a pogum jutting out this way, and the house opposite it over here, which is more than 2,000 away from the pogum, that you can't join up with that house. But if the house is opposite the city mamish, not opposite a pogum which is jutting out from the city, but opposite the city mamish, then even if it's more than 2,000 amos, you can stand the city in that direction. So as he says, let me start about Ella Keneged HaPogum. The house opposite Pogum. I feel Kama even extends much further out. And I'm like, I also hold that a house which is opposite the city mamish, not opposite the pogum, can extend the city in that direction. Okay, it's not that dissimilar from Reb Chaim. According to this is the I would show you the picture of Reb Chaim, but I think it's just going to confuse. So I'm not going to show you that picture. Now it's important to note that even obviously you can't just go say, oh, there's a house 3,000 amos away from the city. I'm going to make that the edge of my city. No, obviously there's some continuity. The individual houses, even you can go beyond the question is whether you can go beyond 2,000 amos on the basis of individual houses or not. And the according to Reb Chaim is saying as well, when the city extends in that direction to a large extent, it's like this inverted resh, according to the picture you showed from the article. So then, yeah, you can continue in that direction, even though that means on the other side of the city where it doesn't continue, it's going to go well beyond 2,000 amos. According to Yerushalmi Kipshuto, also doesn't mean that you can just pick as long as there's a house opposite the main structure of the city, it's supposed opposite Pogum, you can go as far as you want out from the city and still include it in the city. No, there has to be some continuity. That's what they've been saying. Well, since there's some continuity, there are houses which are leading over to that direction, even though they're isolated, still you can continue to see in that direction. So again, there has to be continuity. House every regular intervals. We don't know yet what those intervals necessarily are, but there has regular intervals, and then you can say beyond 2,000 amos if those houses are opposite the main structure of the city, as opposed to opposite a pogum, which juts out from the city on the side. And continuing along these lines, he says, the Yerushalmi Kipshuto adds here, Hahen nu pogum, or Nemahenu pogum. In other words, he says that there's evidence that you're aber as much as you need to, because why should you say that this is the pogum over here, right? Say the pogum is over there. In other words, you can go out as long as there's continuity, you can say this is the pogum, and I'm following this pogum over here, going as far out as I need to go. And similarly, he says, Rav Nachman said, Ad Russian di Nasa. As comment says, Amokam Acher Yachol Aber, Ideas Batim. Actually, he says, he argues Rabbi Yochanan, says, yeah, that Alpine, but I'm not sure he's arguing. I think it's according to the Reb Chaim, according to the article as well, he's agreeing. He's saying that you can extend it, beyond well beyond 2,000 amos, even up to the edge of the district, if there's continuity to that place. Okay, there is a difference. There is some difference between question according to the article that you can even, let's say, even connect it up pogum, but I'm not sure that I would not say that here. Just you can extend it as far as you want, even to the edge of the district, if there's a continuity of even isolated houses corresponding to the either according to Reb Chaim, corresponding to the structure of the city, or the Yerushalmi Eruvin, opposite the main body of the city. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the Amud for today. Yes, Mama Shannon, Ram Gimel Bay, so we'll stop here for today.